I'm just gonna say it right now, if you think you're going to be walking away from this video with any faith left in humanity, you've got another thing coming. Humans have been around for both an incredibly long and a reasonably short amount of time, and this history that we have reflects this. We are only human, and humans are very, very weak, whether in body or spirit. This list will reflect that weakness, so let's do something very hard, but more worthwhile than anything else in the world. Let's look at the top 10 darkest eras in human history. Number 10, the Civil War. This one is a little personal for me. I grew up in Virginia, and it can't be understated how important the Civil War is there. Yeah, there's the obvious bit of the creeps and weirdos that wave the stars and bars around like it's their birthright, but the more interesting thing is that they actually really believe it is. To explain, the Civil War was a conflict in American history that ran from 1861 to 1865, and it's one of the bloodiest conflicts in a nation already drowning in blood. The specific cause of this war was that the Confederate States, shortened to the Confederacy, were determined to continue their usage of slave labor, while the Union demanded that they free their captives. By the war's end, over 1 million people had been lost to the conflict, a war where the statement "brother turned on brother" was truer than ever. And though the war did end, its effects are still felt today. I grew up seeing it in my neighbor's eyes, and that is a kind of hate that I will never forget. Number 9. The Crusades. Between 1095 and 1291, a series of religious wars would be initiated by the Christian Church with the intent of taking the land of Jerusalem from those who lived there. These atrocities were committed with the same ease that comes with justifying any actions taken in the name of a defunct belief system. And hundreds of people were massacred at the hands of an invading force, cities plundered of their belongings in the name of God. These atrocities call into question the motivations of a force that proclaims the word of Jesus Christ, yet does not adhere to his nor his Father's teachings. Number 8. 536. I'm being cheeky with this one, but the year was nominated by scholar Michael McCormick as the worst year to be alive, and when you hear about the reasons why, I don't doubt that you'll agree. This is primarily contributed to the climate of the time, which was near apocalyptically affected as a volcano erupted in Iceland, causing famine and blotting out the sun, as well as extreme weather such as snowfall in August, preventing harvest. On top of that, the events of the year contributed to creating the conditions that led to the Justinian bubonic plague. Just a real good year. Number 7. The Great War. Started due to a massive web of allegiances collapsing under the weight of itself, World War I saw the mass advancements that had been made in weapons technology burst forth in a messy conflict that was, at the time, dubbed the war to end all wars. It didn't. The absolute horror of this war was so great that following its conclusion was the signing of the Treaty of Versailles and the establishment of the League of Nations, a largely ineffectual organization that hoped to prevent another war. Number 6. World War II. And so the League failed, lasting from 1939 to 1945. World War II saw the rise of fascism in the East and imperialism in the West, the Axis powers putting in the hours to forcibly implement their systems of belief where they deemed fit. The atrocities that occurred cannot be done justice with words alone, and especially in a day and age where certain ideologies are finding their way back into popularity, we must remind ourselves of the absolute horrors committed during this conflict and pray that we never find ourselves in one any similar. Number 5. China's Great Famine. There's nothing great about this one, it's just terrible. Largely attributed to the policies of the PRC chairman Mao Zedong, this famine was a disaster like none other. Food distribution was handled exceptionally poorly, and agricultural techniques were laughably inane. For example, farmers were commanded to place their seeds closer together to exhibit communist strength, which led to, of course, most of the crops dying off. There was also the Four Pests campaign, which killed all of the sparrows, birds necessary for natural seed distribution. Then there was the lies about how much grain was being produced, not to mention the millions of farmers that were forced to instead work in steel factories. Starvation was bad enough that if a single family member died, the family would not bury them for fear of losing that family member's daily rations. Corpses were placed in beds, and officers were just told that they were sick. Number 4. Nanjing. Yes, this is a part of World War II, and yes, it deserves to be mentioned on its own. While I am not allowed to strictly state what happened, know that it was horrible, and more importantly, that the Japanese government continues to deny that it happened to this day, as well as their war crimes committed in Korea. What happened at Nanjing was an atrocity like none other, and if we forget, it will happen again. 200,000 dead at least. I will not go into detail, but I urge you to understand that not only were these crimes committed, but heavily encouraged by all personnel present. Number 3. The Atlantic slave trade. Existing from the 16th to 19th centuries, the Atlantic slave trade is an act of which there is no metaphor which can exist to describe the inhuman cruelty of those involved. It is estimated that 12 to 13 million African civilians were sold and shipped across the sea, and 1 in 12 did not make the journey due to just about every single cause that could be imagined. The results of this business was a massive displacement of the residents of Senegambia, Upper Guinea, the Windward Coast, the Gold Coast, the Bight of Benin, the Bight of Biafra, West Central Africa, and Southeastern Africa. It's estimated that around 173 city-states and kingdoms were affected by this displacement, and 45 total ethnic groups experienced displacement, the 10 most prominent being the Bakongo, the Mande, the Gube speakers of Togo, Ghana, and Benin, the Akan, the Wolof, the Igbo, the Mabundu, the Yoruba, the Chamba, and the Makua. It is impossible to know exactly how many died, and we may never know. And while I can just stand here and list names, it doesn't stop the fact that I am someone who has benefited from these atrocities in ways that I've seen and ways that were invisible to me. And no amount of white guilt can absolve me from the fact that I am, by nature of my being in this world, a product of this environment. And if you look like me, then so are you. Number 2. The colonization of North America. Nope, we aren't stopping there. America and Canada are lands that were forged through the mass slaughter of the people living there. Second verse, same as the first, you should know this, but if you don't, your teachers failed you, and I will do my best to help make that right. European colonization attempts of North America have been dated back as far as anything, but it never truly began in a systematic way until 1492. Christopher Columbus was credited with discovering America, despite people having lived here for hundreds of years. What followed was not just genocide, but a cultural erasure, one that is still ongoing today. But the First Nations are still here. They aren't gone. To claim otherwise would be a lie and a disservice to their name, so all I can do is ask you to please support any First Nations communities and movements that need your help, because the government sure ain't gonna do it. Number 1. Right now. Oh no, he's getting political again. Live with it, sweetie. The current era is plagued with misinformation, homegrown fascist political movements gaining power with estranged youths, people who have become so rich that they no longer need to care about being human. Despite being more technologically advanced than ever, we failed to stop a pandemic that could have been thwarted by just staying inside for 2 weeks because some people were just too precious to have an ounce of responsibility. Mistrust and hate is higher than ever, and corporations own more of you than you will ever own of them. Systemic issues still plague every single facet of our society. People of color are being oppressed by a police force that just doesn't care if they live or die, and queer people have to fight every single day to be viewed as human. Wars rage around the world, lives are taken and sold for cheap, and no one cares enough to try and band together for long enough to stop at least one of these things. Now, this video was rough, and I want you to know that there is hope. So long as you are still here, and so long as you are still doing something, then there is hope. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.